Hello, my name is Hubert Scheer. I'm the General Manager of SiR Academy. Besides the training sessions and workshops we organize for companies, whether it's in-house or on open locations, we also are organizing academic courses which are of that nature for those people who want to do additional research or further research in the area of service relationships, goodwill and loyalty. I have with me a PhD researcher, Olaf Hermans, and thank you, Olaf, because I want you to explain a little bit more the PhD level of that academic course.
Yeah.
How is that structured and what are the topics that you're gonna deal with?
Yes, thank you for having me. Indeed, relationships and service relationships in particular are my field of passion. So I completed my doctoral education at Pennsylvania State University, and I worked with people from different disciplines, psychology, sociology, relational communication, business, information sciences, on trying to capture a relationship as a concept. So what are the relevant concepts within a relationship, and also how can, of course, relationships be improved? And then specifically looking at service relationships, so relationships where one party needs to provide a service to another. So not so much into the interpersonal relationships between private people, although there are serious analogies. So in the academic sessions that we will organize with people like you, we would first like to go into the fundamentals of relationships. So which means is we're gonna look into how different disciplines are looking at relationships. So within business, psychology, relationship sciences, they all have different ideas about what a relationship is. So definitions of relationships.
So it's not only social psychology, it's also economy?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So you can look at, and then you go into different schools of thought. You can see as a relationship as exchange, where you do something and I pay for it and you do it well and then I come back and so on. So that's a relationship defined as exchange. But relationships can also be defined as ongoing interactions from which we derive meaning. So we start to actually think that we like each other simply from the conversations that we are having.
Yes.
And that's what we call a dyadic school of thought and so on. So we will be diving, and we summed up some here. We will be looking at the developmental school of relationships, where you say that relationships always start small and then grow bigger and go down and so on. So what are the stages of relationships and so on? We're looking into the dialectical school. Sometimes people want to be close, sometimes they want to be remote. So people want to do things by themselves in relationships or want to be together, so more collaborative. And then you need to kind of balance things. So relationships can be defined as a balancing act. We're looking into that. We're looking into the social cognitive school of thought, which is more like, what am I thinking, how you are thinking about me, and so on. So more about how people in a relationship are thinking about each other, which is typically also applicable to marketing. Customers are thinking like, are you trying to lure me into something? So, when we talk about suspicion and trust and fairness, like what you do, is this fair? Then actually customers are, heavily thinking about what you're doing and interpreting it and also determining their behavior based on that. So there's different schools. We're looking at the skills. What are the skills that people need actually to build relationships? Some people are not capable of building relationships. You need to have empathy, authenticity, and all these things. You need to be open, trustworthy, all these things. But that is applicable in personal relationships, but also, of course, in business and in customer relationships.
So
we will be looking into those schools.
When you have the fundamentals or the fundaments of the whole, I would say, studies, first of all, to do that. Secondly, that you would go to what are the different schools offering in that situation. And then thirdly, you probably will come to what is the actual relationship today, and how is perceived in the market or is perceived in research and so forth. But where do you go from there then?
Yeah, so what we, of course, from the fundamentals we have developed with these researchers, a kind of integrative, kind of summarizing state of what is the best way of looking, if it exists, of looking at a relationship in order to make it manageable. Because eventually we want to manage relationships, not just understand them, but also improve them. And so what we came up with is what we call a concept which is called the state of the relationship, which is an overall perception of parties in a relationship, how each of them perceive the relationship. So it can be more or less complex with many dimensions. So relationships can be simple, like butterfly. You just like one thing that counts is being in love. But relationships can also be complex when you are in a divorce or when you start to separate or negotiate. And there's a lot of things playing out in relationships. So within this state of the relationship, we can actually, create a kind of a summary state of all the dimensions that are relevant in determining the success of a relationship in the future. So we will be looking at that, but also how to study that state of the relationship in quantitative terms and in qualitative terms. So can we measure it?
Absolutely.
And which concepts are related? For instance, like trust and identification. What is the link? How are intimacy and closeness related to each other, and so on. So, of course, we can start to build relationship models within that state of the relationship. So, and then you can create or model relationship trajectories. So, how do you go from a simple relationship to a more complex relationships? So, you can go into dynamic modeling, and we would love to, invite people into that discussion with us. There's a lot of research to be done. Yeah.
So, what is then the next step? Because we're talking about PhD here.
Yeah.
It means there must be an innovative twist or swing to new ideas, new concepts, which will be applicable could be in research, could also be applicable in society in general.
Yeah.
So what is your quest for the future then?
Well, where the challenges are today, so we have an understanding of what the qualities of a relationship are. But of course, we are talking about environments with big data, Internet of Things. There's a lot of information available that indicates what the quality of a relationship is. But all those data need to be integrated into those models. So there's a lot of work there to be done, methodology-wise, but also empirically, like what causes what. So there's challenges in the information sciences. But also, for instance, like Markov model. How do we go from one state to a more favorable state? So transition modeling and so on. Where also challenges are is that there are still concepts, relational concepts that need to be discovered. It's like in the universe, there's like relationship concepts out there that we don't measure and conceptualize today. For instance, when a concept like trust has been conceptualized and operationalized in many studies. But trust in what? Trust in the fact that I will be loyal, trust in your service, trust in... So very often we have forgotten to be specific about the object of emotions or relational concepts. And so there's really like blank territory for PhD students where they actually can jump in. I must also say is that there is clearly a need from our end to include people in our efforts, and so there we're just an open house. Reversely, when people like you are doing research in whatever domain, relationships can be an important moderator. For instance, if you do research about employee motivation, then the relationship with your supervisor could play an important role in employee motivation. So if you are, for instance, in organizational behavior. But then operationalizing that, like how do you measure the relationship with your supervisor, that is something where we can help. So we help people to conceptualize and operationalize their variables. As where relationship can jump in as a independent variable, dependent variable, a moderator variable or a mediator variable. So whatever your research is, as soon as you think that in your model relationship somewhere plays a role, we would love to talk to you how you can actually include relationships into your own research. So that's basically the setup of these sessions, which of course are very open. So we don't have a preset agenda whatsoever. We just want to make you more comfortable with the relationship domain. It's a very abstract concept. We have things like goodwill and commitment, involvement, but how do all these concepts actually are different from one another, but also how they relate with one another. So I noticed that especially young researchers have difficulty in kind of keep all those concepts apart from one another, and I think we are in good position to help you.
So if you're interested to follow these academic sessions on PhD level, I would like you to invite and to enroll yourself for these sessions together with Olaf on service relationships, goodwill and loyalty. Thank you.